Hi, everyone, and welcome to this presentation, Effective Leadership Development in Today's Federal Environment. This presentation is brought to us by our gold sponsor, Management Concepts. We have two presenters today. Carol Paiva currently serves as Product Director for the Leadership and Management Portfolio at Management Concepts. In this role, she is responsible for the strategy and execution of training and leadership development offerings, which impact thousands of public sector employees each year. Carol is an accomplished business leader and product management professional with an over 15-year international career in both B2B and B2C industries and with multinational corporations. Carol recently is focusing on educational solutions. Joining her is Betty Friedman, a subject matter expert and solutions manager with the sales performance team at Management Concepts, where she develops solutions in meeting federal and commercial customers' training requirements. Formerly, she invested more than 25 years as a leading sales executive representing educational training and knowledge management software for commercial and federal customers. Betty holds a Bachelor of Science degree in education from the State University of New York at Fredonia. Ladies and gentlemen, Carol and Betty.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, and thank you everyone for joining this session today. It's a pleasure to be here presenting at the Annual Institute and this year in this virtual format. Again, feel free to chat with us during this session, and I hope this time with us will help foster some thinking and discussion around this topic. I'll pass over to Betty to kick us off today.
Thank you, Carol. Before we dive into our topic, effective leadership development in today's federal environment, and for those who may not be familiar with Management Concepts, we have been supporting professional development throughout the federal government for over 46 years. Currently, we are serving almost 80,000 professionals per year with trainings in multiple domain areas and across multiple delivery modalities. We are dedicated to the development of leadership and management skills from aspiring and high potential personnel through to senior executive leaders. Our programs incorporate off-the-shelf solutions as well as tailored and custom design programs, which we are able to scale to meet the needs of either an individual or a program across the full organization. Feel free to contact us after this session in the event you would like to learn more about our programs. I'll be passing over to Carol to briefly cover the agenda and get us through today's topic.
Thank you, Betty. And so today we are going really to focus on what it takes to be a leader in the public sector. We'll talk about some things we have learned, how we shaped our thinking into a framework, and how you can apply that framework to your leadership solutions and programs. But before we start, I would like you to take a few minutes completing the poll that is being made available to you, and we'll interact in the chat with some of the findings. We want to know really how you rate your current leadership bench in your organization. We want to know if you have the right leaders to achieve your mission today and maybe 5 years from now. Give us insight and answer the questions that are now available for you, and take a moment to engage with us while we cover this topic. For some of the concepts that we will explore today, I think it's important that we understand and are under the same belief about leadership and how it can be developed, and that it can happen regardless of seniority or career stage. And leadership is core to any organization, to create its vision and help shape the culture and accomplish its mission. We believe that leadership development is a lifelong journey. And I would make here an analogy even with, let's think for a minute at youth sports, right? Kids growing up, we see leadership at a young age and what it develops on a soccer field. As we get a bit older, we get involved in clubs, or if not in sports, it's happening at the playground or in school projects along many other venues. And that's happening intuitively through the exposure and opportunity for guided practice. our entry in the workforce is as another step essentially in that journey. But is leadership the same in the context of public and private sector? There are certainly unique characteristics that we should explore. And I'll pass it to Betty to cover some of the nuances of leadership in government and in the federal space.
Thanks, Carol. We understand government organizations have unique propositions, nuances, and context, all of which are important considerations in the development of leadership programs. For example, the long-term public service mindset and motivation can be more powerful than the extrinsic motivations such as monetary incentives when supported and nurtured correctly. Government organizations continually face political shifts and changes to policies. Leaders have to lead in a vulnerable environment. Adding to that, there's the impact of keeping pace with the ever-changing technology and automation, telework, and workforce requirements, the shift in demographics across the government workforce. All of these circumstances and factors impact the leadership dynamics and the leadership skills necessary to be successful in leading an organization's mission. With these ever-changing events, there are a variety of trends for which to pay attention in creating a higher bar of leadership programs. Before we explore leadership development solutions, let's examine some of these trends. One example, according to OPM's annual motivation survey, is that leaders are not inspiring their teams to remain within their current organization. The survey also states that the leadership satisfaction index is the lowest among contributing factors for employee engagement and retention, and continues that there is less interest from GS-13s through to GS-15s in joining an SES program. Meanwhile, the entire workforce is aging. The growing retirement eligible population has not yet retired en masse. However, were that trend to continue and increase, the challenges will become much more significant. And this past year, the onset of the COVID environment brought even new challenges for leaders and for workforce, requiring rapid adaptation of work dynamics and much more needed resilience, agility, and empathy.
Thank you, Betty, for sharing some of the considerations about leading and building leaders in the federal space. I just want to emphasize that while the need for leadership development programs seems obvious, a good number of organizations are not creating the desired impact. And leadership at all levels is necessary, and it means that we need to build and invest on leaders from orientation to retirement. Senior level programs are generally very good, but oftentimes senior level programs are standalone and they don't build on prior learning or language within the context of the organization. We also see a great deal of development money being spent on a few people, which does not lead to a healthy expansion of that leadership bench. So this leads me actually to ask more input from you. So let's answer a few more questions. We want to know more about your leadership programs and the state that they are. Please go ahead and provide answers for us in the chat. And now, as we laid out some of the challenges and some of the opportunities they are before us, in order to make these ideas more accessible, we have converted our thoughts into a framework that helps shape our leadership development offerings. And we believe that we can be adopted successfully to improve any leadership program. And we've been on a journey unveiling public sector leadership challenges, and we've been in the front lines. We have delivered thousands of leadership training sessions and analyzed the feedback from all learners that were kind enough to provide it. We partnered with SEA, the Senior Executive Association, and other associations to ensure that we maintain the pulse of their memberships. We most recently developed a partnership with CCL, that stands for Center for Creative Leadership. And CCL actually has been committed for the past 50 years or 5 decades to conducting original scientific research in the field of leadership development, and it has one of the largest leadership research database in the world. We a rich body of evidence-based science that is used to accelerate leadership performance. That to say, we are constantly, in the lookout to what's working to develop leaders, where they are, and whether we are directly involved or not in some of those ventures. Our commitment and experience in the workforce development is at the core of what we are proposing, our proposition. So how are we going to grow leaders in the environment that we just described it and some of the challenges we outlined? What is the right focus to get the best outcomes for the government budget dollars? Much of the federal workforce choose their vocation because they are mission and service oriented. We need to provide these potential leaders an environment to grow at all levels. We need to help them not just by teaching leadership skills, but by helping them figure out how best to apply these skills and turn them into innate competencies and behaviors. We need to help them understand a path of learning that they take over the long term if they stay the course within the federal space. Our focus should be on helping our workforce with the application of those skills we want them to employ. We also believe that leadership is internalized via insight and experience. Where early career levels are being taught leadership is often, just too often, I guess, just about informing of principles rather than effective practice of those principles. Some behaviors and traits are nuanced human elements that require thoughtful practice to do well and are the foundation of solid leadership. We need to teach core skills and technical skills and management skills, but we also need to bring some of the magic of some of the premium senior programs down to the rest of the workforce. And how can we do that? So I want to use this graph to present the main pillars that led to our framework. This chart represents the leadership growth in seniority on the vertical Y axis and the different types of learning on the horizontal X axis. And there is no doubt that we must be teaching the workforce specific work skills and specific leadership skills. And those are actually represented by the blue triangles. But we are going to also zoom in into the components that actually make for what we're calling effective application. And we're going to be breaking it down into the 4 components that together help effective leaders at every stage of their progression. So helping people acquire skills and improve their effectiveness should be supported by 4 integrated dimensions. We are going to go through each of those dimensions as I described in more detail. But before we do, please note that we are not, bolting in any new skills or competencies. They are just a balanced, integrated way to practice in order to grow leaders. With that, let's go and cover the first dimension that we are calling the expert and explicit instruction. At this dimension of this integrated model, the expert explicit instruction, where concepts should be brought to life by exceptional or very good facilitators with experience and clear understanding of the workforce, especially the federal and government workforce challenges. Some of the characteristics of programs that do well in this dimension often include content in leadership and foundational skills that are, they're curated and applied to specific government scenarios. Topics that are also mapped to a specific and desired competencies. And of course, application of instructional design best practice for the different modalities and delivery options to meet the learners where they need. The instruction is actually adjusted to the median for best and more appropriate learning in each modality. Instructors consistently align a career progression continuum that creates that overall journey and progression for delivery of those concepts in a common language and a leadership program philosophy. The next dimension is about experiential learning, right? And the second dimension, enrich the learning, but also why not make it fun? So it's about deeply engaging the students that can learn by doing in a safe way that feels similar to how they might apply concepts on the job. And I think it's important to know the instructional design should include active learning where learners engage in discussions, in problem solving, in role playing, in creating their own materials, which is more effective, much more effective, in fact, than just presenting and explaining content. It requires learners to use information in order to achieve a learning outcome. And exercise and activities in this case are designed with a point in mind to lead learners to master particular knowledge and skills. Active learning is effective because it's associated with how the brain, works, including the three principles of deep processing. The more mental processing you perform, the more likely you are to retain the information. So you need to engage learners to focus on and think through the most important material. The deliberate practice learning is enhanced by paying attention to the feedback and using it to update your knowledge and subsequent behavior. And the principles of association. So learning is enhanced here by associating new information with what's already known. Some of the characteristics of some of the, those programs include a learning environment where trying and experimenting new things is stretching beyond comfort zones is encouraged. A well thought out public sector specific scenarios and simulations, and activities such as workshops, hand-on activities with groups that allow participants to bring their own work-specific challenge to the fold. So I'm going to move on to cover a little bit about the third dimension, about collaboration. And as part of the integration approach, the collaborative learning should be facilitated by instructors and subject matter experts. And the content for learning in this case is being generated by participants and peers and kept relevant to the topic by the instructors that are moderating that or facilitating that collaborative experience. And some of the examples of characteristics of programs that include effective collaborative experience provide opportunity to interact both synchronously and asynchronously with leaders in the government space and in the federal space in this context. And it could be in or outside agency boundaries. An expectation also for students to learn by sharing their challenges as well as contributing to solutions to others. Opportunities to participate in communities of practice that live beyond the training classes. And of course, a technology backbone and the appropriate infrastructure that provides easy ways to collaborate. Finally, I'm going to get to my fourth point of the 4 dimensions for the effective application that covers the practice and on-the-job practice. And the application can be supported by tools and techniques to bring concepts every day at work. And some of the characteristics of the programs may include ways to distill some of the elements of the training and learning into job aids or takeaways that are easily referenced and applied. Continue learning opportunities, so through like small doses of learning in intervals to prevent some of the learning decay. Micro learning, easy access to support as needed for those participants in that journey. Suggestions for ongoing reflection and thought exercise, and as well as consultation options for needs analysis and design beyond the leadership development programs. The flexibility to debrief, identify continuous gaps, and provide course correction of the next level of training. So this kind of brings us a little bit full circle to the 4 dimensions that we covered for the effective application. So I'll pass back to Betty to discuss some of the implementation considerations at this point.
Thanks, Carol. Hopefully you have seen some truths in our leadership framework and perhaps are already thinking about how you can adjust your leadership program or your own leadership journey. We will try to help with a few examples. Carol? Understanding the gaps within a leadership development program are really not enough. As we discussed, leadership development is a lifelong journey. We can make the journey a bit easier and more effective if we have a map, such as a GPS or a plan with an end goal in mind that is looking at the leadership development from hiring all the way through to retiring. A critical element within organizations successfully incorporating a leadership program is the planning throughout the leadership program, identifying the individual progression holistically that is aligned with the agency's organizational goals. These successful programs provide a seamless continuum that is understood by the employees and also incorporates the language and the philosophy consistent across the many different leadership development levels and opportunities. Let's explore the importance of flexibility in planning a leadership development program. By incorporating flexibility, you have the opportunity to take into account the uniqueness of an organization's requirements and the uniqueness of the personnel participating in each of the leadership development programs. We know that different agencies have different leadership challenges. Different leaders also respond to different types of learning, and leaders as individuals experience leadership concepts very, very differently depending on where they are within their career. As a program is designed and developed along the leadership development maturity model, an important factor to conclude is where on the maturity model is the organization as to the expectations for a given program. At the ad hoc level, for example, the leadership development program most likely will be more reactive to meeting the needs that are required at a specific or given time. As you move up the leadership development maturity model, the focus becomes aligned with the overall competencies required for the different levels of leadership and continuing upwards within the model. The focus becomes more strategic, aligning with the cultural framework and the agency, and continues with, let's look at the role of the flexibility across the leadership development maturity model. As shown at the bottom left of the maturity model, the ad hoc model, generating a leadership program for individual contributors focuses more on the competencies to be incorporated within the program. As you move up the scale, the programs represent a more thoughtful approach to leadership development. For example, the middle program focuses more on the managed program and may have some leadership paths that allow for personal choice across the program. For personal choice, we can be more thoughtful about ensuring the right blend of the dimensions, but still allow for some flexibility. At the very top, we are approximating senior executive programs, cohort-driven, highly customizable, and very focused on the green dimensions of experiential learning, collaborative learning, and on-the-job practice and incorporation. We are curating the right experience for the right level and or the agency or the department circumstances that are required. Bottom line, the programs take into account the maturity of the agency's current leadership development, which in turn will help inform the most appropriate approach of the design to the solution. Where does your agency fit on the spectrum from ad hoc to organized in terms of leadership development, planning, and delivery? Let's now look at the actual government, at some actual government frameworks.
One thing, Patty, before we jump into the frameworks, I would just want to mention one more consideration. And while you answering the question about where your organization fit into the maturity model, I want to bring up that at the end of the day, we should also look at the positive impact of the leadership development programs. Here is a model that was introduced by our partner CCL from Center of Creative Leadership that I talked a little bit earlier. And it's available as a handout in the session. It really expands on the Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of training evaluation from reaction to results. However, this model is specifically relevant to leadership development as it combines the 4 levels of impact tied to the individual, group, organization, and society with 3 unique factors that contribute to the overall effectiveness of leadership development programs. And the contributing factors in this case include the leadership solution, which is what we were talking more extensively today, such as the content, the design characteristics, delivery elements, and pathways for the development journey, and so forth. But it also take into account some additional factors, such as the leader characteristics. Is the leader ready and willing to change behaviors? Are there other individual characteristics of that leader that impacts its development? And then the context to which the development programs are being introduced. So internal factors such as culture, level of support, existing or previous leadership programs, along with other organizational dynamics can have an effect, as well as external factors such as shifts in policies, significant economic changes and social issues. All that can contribute to the leadership program experience and its impact in each of its 4 levels. Ideally, you want to create impact in more than just one level. Ideally, it goes beyond just the individual. So let's keep this consideration also in mind when implementing and evaluating results. So Betty, can you now walk us through some of the application of the framework and examples?
Sure. As a quick review, in developing and implementing leadership programs, utilizing our leadership framework of the 4 integrated dimensions that Carol explored earlier, leadership skills and competencies, expert and explicit instruction, experiential learning and collaboration, and on-the-job practice is the importance and incorporates the importance of flexibility for the progression at each level of leadership, from an individual contributor through team leads, project leads, to leading people as supervisors or managers, and continuing through to leading a function, division, or an organization as a whole, as do senior level managers. In addition, effectively achieving balance between all of the integrated dimensions, you need to ensure that you have a strong toolbox of instruments to incorporate into your leadership development programs. Budgets do not always allow for purchasing all the components you may be interested in bringing in to your leadership program. However, incorporating them over time allows you to learn what works most effectively for your teams and at each level and what level. Are you offering these varied learning opportunities to your workforce? For example, are you incorporating coaching, capstone projects, leadership challenges, self and or 360-degree assessments, and opportunities for collaboration, where cohort members have the opportunity to utilize communities of practice platforms for connectivity throughout the program? Let's dive a little bit deeper on the career progression. The framework is fluid. In terms of intensity of each dimension, this allows us to find the right balance for each career stage. With early leaders, we are going to focus more on teaching them the skills, practicing those skills in a safe environment. Here is an example of incorporating the different instruments into the dimensions of an early stage leading self aspirational leaders program design. There is careful selection of instruments and intensity of each of the dimensions, which varies to better support this early stage of leadership progression, from in-person training, self-assessments, collaboration, leadership challenges within a capstone project, following even beyond, extending the learning to online resources after the completion of the program. Moving now into a few promotions, With the level of leadership whereby their role includes leading others as a supervisor or maybe a manager, we see that the dimensional focus is likely to shift, given the fact that the leader has more experience to share and an extensive background to internalize the experience of others. With this stage, we are now preferencing a more collaborative learning approach. Also, with this level of leadership, there are more opportunities to practice their leadership skills, and therefore, we should be providing them more tools to support on-the-job practice. Learning brand new skills becomes proportionally less important compared with the effectiveness and the use of their skills and the ability incorporated into their leadership roles and responsibilities. These examples of how we incorporated the multiple instruments translates into the programs that we developed in partnership with many of our client organizations, specifically within the federal government. Several of these examples of leadership development programs in partnership with some of our clients incorporate off-the-shelf course content tailored to meet their specific needs of the organization and take in mind the level of leadership required for each of the programs. For example, an early stage career program is one from the Securities and Exchange Commission's Aspiring Leaders Program. This is a cohort-based program including educational theory training, self-assessments, individual coaching sessions, and communities of practice portal providing a collaborative learning environment. This program is unique in that it is developed over a 9-month period of time for the participants, and they attend a class in half-day sessions over that 9-month period of time. Another example is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. A management skills for new supervisors program also is a cohort-based program. However, this program is a 5-day intensive leadership program for new supervisors and managers that, along with the educational theory, incorporates the opportunity for the NOAA agency-specific personnel to have forums included in the program to provide real-world application to agencies programs. Another program is one for NAGAP, which is the National Association of Graduate Enrollment Management. It's their program called the Leadership Academy. This program is a 7-month program based across a virtual model with incorporating 360-degree assessments, executive coaching, collaboration, again with a community of practice portal for supporting the Leadership Academy program and the NAGAP organizational programs. Carol.
Thank you, Betty. I think, the idea here is to give some examples of how some of the principles that we discussed today could be applied when carefully developing programs for different stages of leadership development. And I hope some of this information was helpful to you, and we would like to open for any questions you may have. Feel free to continue to reach us through the chat in this Q&A part of the presentation. And for those leaving us now, we want to thank you for attending the session today. And feel free to provide any feedback and any comments and questions you may have. Thank you, Betty, for joining me. And thank you, Cheryl, for the opportunity of being here today with you all.
Thank you.